Hi, crew. Welcome to Andy Makes Sense of It. I'm Andy. In this episode, we're going to make sense of first quarter earnings report from Home Depot, Lowe's, and the online bookseller. Hey, I'm retired now from Home Depot, but I still enjoyed doing these while I was there. I covered these industry earnings releases in an easy understand manner without using confusing jargon and explaining things as I went along. So I want to continue that in my retirement and do that. So I appreciate you tuning in. And what I'd like to do now is make sense of the first quarter 2026 earnings releases from these companies. I got the money tie on. It's a tradition. So let's go. All right. So got to start with Home Depot. Got to start with the home court. Um, Home Depot first quarter revenue 2026, the highest first quarter revenue in company history. $1.9 billion above last year, which is a 4.8% increase. What's the number? $41,765,000,000. That's $41,000 million. That is awesome. How about money? How do we put any money in the bank? You guys know that earnings is my favorite number. Was the sixth highest first quarter earnings in company history, 144 million below Q1 of last year, 4.2%. $3,289,000,000 in the bank. We're going to get into that and why those numbers are going down and what that looks like. So stay tuned. We're going to go over that in a second. All right, so let's take a step back and talk about the revenue since 2015. There's a nice stair step there from 2015, and we went up and up and up, and then boom, pandemic started. That's pandemic spending went crazy. 2021. And I said at the time, hey, that's a once in a lifetime thing that occurred, and but it's just amazing that 32.7%. But I want you guys to take a look at this. So I can't believe this either. Between 2015, 2026, the number doubled. A company this size and the number doubled? That's absolutely amazing. Good on you. All right, so let's talk a little bit of perspective. I'm going to take the number we just went over, Home Depot's first quarter revenue for 2026, $41.8 billion, right? And I want to compare it to some other companies you may have heard of entire 2024, the entire year of 2024 compared to Home Depot's first quarter 2026 revenue is unbelievable. Home Depot would be number 107 on the Fortune 500 list just with the first quarter revenue. I've already done half of what the blue people did in all of 2024. So we fits in there. Delta, Oracle, Coke, Uber, a little bit higher, did more than Best Buy, Netflix, and Starbucks did in all of 2024. So never, ever, ever forget that you matter. Doesn't matter what part of the organization you work in, if you're in IT, if you're in business, if you're in supply chain, if you're in merchandising, your pricing, if you're in the stores, you're in a distribution center, doesn't matter where you do that work, it does matter how you do that work. So please be the best doer you can be. You're part of a team that continues to crush it, and you do matter. You say, Andy, how do you know? I know because these numbers don't make themselves. You help make this happen. All right, so let's go over some events that happened in first quarter. First quarter is February, March, and April. This happened in February. Creators went wild over a $25 Home Depot work light. Yeah, work light. After YouTubers discovered it actually performs like a mini studio lamp. Suddenly everyone was saying, forget Hollywood, we're filming in aisle 12. The Husky tripod light became the unlikely star of Tool Talk, of all things. Then, in March, March brought us the crossover nobody saw coming. David Beckham, Home Depot, part of the FIFA World Cup 2026 campaign. Beckham helped fans bring the pitch to the backyard. Social media had a field day with it because nothing says bend it like Beckham quite like picking out Makita tools and perfecting your lawn stripes. Then in April, Home Depot turned the garden center into a full-on spring concert. Live music, lush greenery, a vibe so good. People joked they were coming for the mulch but staying for the show. The garden center sessions made shopping for soil feel like a VIP event, said someone. All right. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of why we're here. We're here to talk about earnings. Mr. Ted Decker in release said, hey, our first quarter results were in line with expectations. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You guys can read that. But bottom line, what Mr. Decker is saying is, hey, great work in the battle for dollars. In Q1, we said what we said we were going to do. Thanks to our associates. Mic drop, leave the room, done. Boom, that's what we do. Lowe's CEO Marvin Ellison, man of many words. It's going to take up space. And he says, oh, yeah, thanks to the associates, but only for the work they've done this spring. It seems kind of odd at the end there. But anyway, so let's get into the real meat and potatoes of this thing. We only really review 4 financial measures when we do this. We review revenue, aka also known as sales. Revenue includes sales, but that's not all. There's store and online sales, of course, sales from subsidiaries, all kinds of fees, rental fees, credit fees, and anything that brings in cash is known as revenue. We're also going to take a look at comparable store sales, also known as comps. For sale to be comparable to 2025, we're comparing to 2025, store had to be open in 2025 and in 2026. Makes sense, right? But let's say you had a new store that opened after first quarter of 2025. It was closed in first quarter of 2025, but open in 2026. It's not considered comparable. And then on the flip side of that, if I had a store that was open, but then it was closed, moved, whatever, that guy is not comparable. So that's the definition of comp. So now, then earnings, aka profit, also known as profit, is my favorite number, is literally the revenue dollars we talked about above, minus all the expenses that you incurred during the course of the quarter. And if you remember, I did a thing about how Home Depot makes money, and I came up with the acronym SWAT it. Sell something for more than you paid for it, while covering your costs associated with selling it, and include extra dollars, take it to the bank, invest in your company, talent, reward them. And the last thing we're going to look at is earnings per share, also known as EPS, which is literally the math that explains it in the title. It's the earnings dollars divided by the number of outstanding shares. So for example, the first quarter of 2026, you saw that $3.289 billion number divided by the 955 million shares that are out in the marketplace. That equals $3.43. So we're going to talk about revenue, comps, earnings, EPS. Let's look at earnings. Let's look at revenue first. So we had that pandemic spending that was still in 2022. We had a hangover after that, 2023, 2024. But 2025, we popped up, and we're continuing that strong momentum in 2026. Lowe's, you finally had a positive quarter after 5 years. It's important that these numbers are positive year over year. Of course, you always want to grow your business, but also know that we beat Wall Street expectations. This is known as beating top line expectations. And Andy, why is it called top line? Because it's the top line of a profit and loss statement. Here's the revenue that you generated for the time period you're reporting on. So in this instance, the analysts, Wall Street said, hey, we're expecting, and they were a month ago, said, hey, we're expecting revenue of $41.52 billion. Well, we beat that. We came up at 41,765. So that's a beat. Boom, good for us. That is awesome. On the low side, the Wall Street analysts said, hey, we expect 22.97. They beat it too, 23.078. So both of us beat top line expectations. That's what that means, and that's where that comes from. So it's not only good that you're growing your business, but you need to grow at the rate that the street is expecting you to grow. All right, we added this a few episodes ago, and I think it's very telling. So revenue by quarter, back to Q1 of 2021, and I tagged it with trend lines. Looking at that, I think I know where I'd rather be and where I would rather have my investment dollars, which I do. All right, so let's talk about comps. Comp store sales. Where's the Lowe's number? Oh, that's right. This is total comp store sales. So for Home Depot, this means America, Canada, Mexico. Lowe's doesn't have any stores other than in the United States. So we had a 0.6 increase in comp sales. Yay, good. And then if we do just look at US, we had 0.4, they had 0.6. All right, so earnings, my favorite number. You're going to see a lot of red on this page because we've got some economic factors going on. We've got some tariffs going on. There's some acquisitions. Those things cost money. Generally, it's getting more and more expensive to run a company, and that is continuing. The effort is to reverse that. That's your goal for next time, is to reverse that. All right, so let's talk about earnings per share. We've got some fluctuating earnings per share back to 2021. For EPS, comparing to Wall Street, once again, the street comes out and he says, we expect this revenue and this EPS. So it's very important, obviously, to increase your earnings per share, but it's more important to beat the Wall Street expectations. So Home Depot, $3.43 was a 3.7% decline versus first quarter of last year. The street expected $3.42. Woohoo! We beat it by a penny. The whisper number was $3.39, which meant some people were thinking, I don't even think they're going to get to the expectation. The blue people, on the other hand, $2.90, a minus 0.7% decline from last year. The expectation was $2.96, and the whisper number was $2.99. So it's important that we beat that, and we did. So when people say they beat bottom line expectations, this is what they're talking about. It's because this is the bottom line of the profit and loss. That's why it's called bottom line expectations. We beat the bottom line. The other folks, not so much. You may see them touting a $3.03 EPS, but that's if they hadn't included some expenses they had in the first quarter due to some acquisitions. But they did incur those expenses. It's kind of like saying, I'd have money left over at the end of the month if I wouldn't have bought that car, but you did, so you don't. All right. So those are the big honking numbers. That's the stuff that we cover. What we also talk about is very important is some selected sales data that Home Depot publishes. We talk about transactions. The number of transactions that are in the store during the first quarter dropped by 0.9%. So about 3.7 million less transactions. But the average ticket, that folks spend during those transactions, went up $2.05, or about 2.3%. So fewer customers are spending more. All right, so let's talk about the online bookseller. Gee whiz. So profit margins are getting tighter. We saw that before with the declining EPS. If we talk about just Home Depot for a second, what I like to do is I like to say, hey, what's that revenue and net earnings and the net margin between those two numbers? So there's that $41.7, $41.8 billion revenue number and the $3.2, almost $3.3 billion that were put in the bank. That's a 7.9% profit return. For the blue people, 23 and 1.6, that's a 7.1% return. Not bad. Hey, we've seen double digits here before for both companies, and those are lowering. But good grief. You get into the online bookseller, $181.5 billion in revenue and $30 billion in the bank. That's a 16.7% net margin. So I'm like, where'd that come from? I dug into their P&L, so we're going to divide this into segments. So there's Home Depot, the 7.9% return on $41 billion in revenue. There's Lowe's, a 7.1% return on $23 billion in revenue. So we've got the online bookseller North America sales. So that was $104 billion with a $10 billion return. Very respectable at 10.1%. But remember, a lot of their fees are in that profit net earnings number as well. So your Prime Video fees, your Amazon Prime fees, those type things that you're paying even before you buy a product. That's one of the things that gets me about companies that do that. Amazon, Costco. I don't buy from Amazon, don't buy from Costco, because I'm not giving you the satisfaction of paying you money before I even go into your store or go online to buy something. It just irks me and it drives me nuts. All right, so off the soapbox about that. So their international sales, 3.9 billion, 1.8 million, 4.5%. Oh, I honestly don't know why they continue to do it, but hey, it's $40 billion in sales. And then this last piece. This last piece is that crazy, awful web service, or no, the average web service thing that I don't remember what it's called, but it's one of those two things. 47.8%. Are you kidding me? That's where the money's coming from, is this awful web service thing that they have. And it just drives me nuts. Anyhow, hey, repeat alert. We talked about this the last time, but I think it's worth mentioning again. Amazon is now the largest company based on revenue in the United States as of last year. Beat Walmart. Walmart has been number one for a long time. So wanting to make sense of it, I dug into the archives. Let's see how the previous holder, the largest company by revenue, has done since 1999. I started with the 1999 because it's the first year the online bookseller appeared on the Fortune list. Plus, it was the year Home Depot was added to the Dow. Plus, we can still party like it's 1999. Huh? All right. So those are for Walmart numbers. Now let's add in the online bookseller numbers. It's incredible growth. I didn't help. I've never had anything. I've never paid to have anything delivered to my home from them. They first appeared on the Fortune list at number 807 in 1999 with $1.6 billion in revenue. In 2002, Walmart became number one. And then the rest, as they say, is history. Tremendous growth. And me being the curious type, I'm like, where was HD through all of this? So here you go. You can see the orange line. Also, for transparency, I do own shares of all three of these companies. I'm not a fan of the online bookseller. I'm not a fan of Walmart, nor do I shop with them. But when it comes to investing my dollars, I'm not stupid. So, and with that, I am done. Please pass this around. Don't have the ability to put meetings on folks' calendars anymore. So I would appreciate it if you tell your friends and neighbors that you can evangelize for me and saying, oh my God, do you want to know anything about earnings release? You should see this thing. Subscribe if you want. Just leave me a comment. I do live for the comments. It makes me feel good as an old guy. So please, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. And I'll see you all again very, very soon.